club. It has been a minute since we have been together, and I am so excited about tonight. We're gonna have an amazing time together. Book club nights are always one of my favorite nights. We get to come together and talk about a book that we've all read. If you're new to book club, Holly Furtick Book Club, welcome. We do spoilers here, and there are some spoilers in this book tonight, and I cannot wait to talk about it with you tonight. We are going to be talking about this book, this amazing story, Counting Miracles, by the one and only Nicholas Sparks. You guys, Nicholas Sparks is going to be joining us tonight, and I cannot wait. And before Nicholas comes on, I want to ask you a couple questions of the book. I want to know what you enjoyed about it and who your favorite characters were and all that great stuff. So as I flip through my cardstock notes here, let me just tell you, I love this book. I loved the pace of this book. That's one of my favorite things about Nicholas Sparks, is that his books are always, they always have romance in them, but there's more plot than just like, do they get together in the end? Because to be honest, those are some of my least favorite books to read, because the answer is yes, they get together in the end or somebody dies, you know? And so that's kind of boring to me. So I love how Nicholas always brings in these other plots and backstories and just really great stuff. All of you are already saying my heart went out to Jasper. You're all already talking about Jasper, and that's my other thing that I loved. I loved Jasper. I love, one of my favorite like elements of a good book for me, is when there is a character that you just are really rooting for. And what I loved about this particular book was that character was an elderly man. And that doesn't normally happen in a book. That's not usually like the main guy that you're cheering for. And so yeah, I loved Jasper. And I love that this book also was loosely based on the book of Job. And we're going to get to talk to Nick about that. Liz says Jasper was like Job. Fishback says Jasper has my heart. Sharon says loved Jasper too. And now you guys are all talking about Arlo. Yes. And how much do we love a book that has a great dog in it? I mean, yes, Christy Collins says, I also love the dog. There is nothing better than a great dog in a book, right? I mean, I seriously, like, I think that is like the chef's kiss on the book, is when there's an animal that you love in the book. Let's see if we can get him to join us. So, let's see. Let me see. Hello.
Hey there, how are you?
I'm so good. Thank you for being on tonight.
My pleasure. It'll be fun. We'll answer some questions. We'll have a good time.
Well, we really, really loved this book, Counting Miracles. Such a great, sweet story, and loved how it was, a faith-based book. And we'd love to start off with you reading a selection from the book.
Sure.
I love
I picked this out. I picked this out special for anyone who wants to know where it is. I believe it's on page 167.
Okay.
Jasper had barely settled into his new job, however, when his life was upended again. In September, only a month after Audrey had left, Hurricane Helene unleashed massive rainfall, and a nearby creek in Ashboro quickly rose to dangerous levels. Fortunately or unfortunately, as the case may be, Jasper was at his house in town, not the cabin, when it began to flood. He pushed through the water that soon reached his waist, gathering up photographs from the mantel, his father's Bible, and many of the carvings they'd made together as he could carry, hauling it all to his truck, which he'd parked on higher ground just in case. As the storm continued to rage, a loblolly in the yard snapped and crashed through the roof. Days later, the water finally receded and hot weather returned. Mold began growing on the walls and the floors, ruining pretty much everything in the house that the storm hadn't. It goes on a little bit, and when he deals with it, he, in the silence that followed, Jasper heard his father's voice. James 1:12. Blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial.
What page did you say that was on?
Page 167.
167. I went to 127. But
Why did
Hurricane
I?
Helene?
Yeah, I thought that was a fun coincidence. It actually, Hurricane Helene came ashore the same day the novel was published. And then, of course, it ravaged North Carolina, just like it ravaged poor Jasper. And here's another funny coincidence. I've been deluged with news articles about a white deer spotted in Asheboro, North Carolina.
No.
Yes. I've been deluged. They'll probably be on my Instagram in a day or two, the news articles. Because of all the cities in this entire country or towns, a white deer has been spotted. And it's actually on the North Carolina Zoo property. It's not in the zoo, but they have like 20 acres outside or whatever, 30 acres. And there it is. They just have a white deer run around.
Stop.
Nope, it's crazy. A couple of wild coincidences. Hurricane Helene and a white deer in Asheboro, North Carolina.
How does this make you feel? Like, do you feel prophetic?
No, I think you feel that the world can be a wonderful and coincidental place at times. I like to think that I try to write things that can happen. They actually can happen. I try to write believable characters, believable events in the stories and things like that. I write about normal people. I don't write about astronauts or politicians or billionaires, right? I write about just regular Joes doing regular things. And sometimes I get accused of, oh, that just couldn't happen. And so it's a lot of fun when you say, oh, but you see, it just did. There's a white deer right now in Asheboro, North Carolina. So
And
I thought the
how
book club
rare is a white deer?
it's about one in, well, there's two kinds. You have albinoism and then leucism.
Okay.
The difference is the albinos have pink eyes, and then the other ones have brown eyes and a brown nose. I think it's like one in a couple thousand, something like that. But anyway, it's all the news around here. I mean, it's a big deal because and the zoo's getting a lot of people wanting to not see those animals. They want to go see the white deer. And I'm like, man, I hope there's no evil poachers out there who want to kill it, right?
I hope that part's not true. That is crazy. And the Hurricane Helene thing, I didn't turn to it. When you said Hurricane Helene, I was like, wait a minute, is he joking? I mean, that's crazy. So I know you've written so many books. I really want to talk specifically about this one because that's the one that we all read together. And I love how you made this book have such strong themes to hope and faith and what to do when you are up against really, really difficult things. So you connected Jasper kind of loosely, which I liked how it wasn't this direct parallel to the story of Job. But what brought you to that? How did you've written so many books, so how do you now think of something new to write about?
Yeah, that's a good question. A lot of times takes a long time to come up with something. This one came from a couple of images years ago, 5, 6, 7 years ago. I just had this image of this old man injured in the forest with a dog standing over him. And that's all I had. I just had this picture. I didn't know who the old man was, why he was in the forest, how he got injured. I didn't know if the dog was his or if it was a stranger's dog. I didn't know anything. But that image was lingering. And then, I was rereading the Bible. I do tend to read the Bible quite frequently. I pray every day also. And I was reading the book of Job. I think that was sometime around COVID. And you're just seeing the trials of Job. And it was this very strange atmosphere in the world back then. And those two ideas came together. I said, oh, well, okay, well, let's make this guy, his life seemed to parallel a bit of Job's life. And then, so I said, okay, that's one story. And then you start adding elements. Well, why is he in the
Yeah.
forest? What's he doing? And then you just, well, this idea, that idea, this idea. I came up with a white deer. And then, of course, I said, wait a minute, you also write a love story. So you got to think of a couple of other characters. And that's the origin story. So I started with Jasper, and then I came back. I modeled Tanner after my cousin Todd, who was in the military, and he was actually, you're getting a lot of fun facts on this book club. He was
I
actually
love
the
it.
inspiration for John in Dear John.
Yeah.
But now, 15 years later, what's happened? And much like the character in the novel, um, he's known a lot of people that he worked with, he served overseas with, that have committed suicide. And
Okay.
how does one
So,
react to
yeah.
that?
Yeah.
When you've lost not one or two, but 5, 6, or 7, or in people that you
Yeah.
put your life on the line to
Yeah.
save them once, and then they end up taking it. And
Wow.
people react in different ways. And, Tanner, he seems that he's all good,
Yeah.
but he's just been running and running and running his whole life. And
Yeah. And never
and
really
that's
connecting, having a hard time like connecting with people.
people or
Yeah.
places, right?
Yeah.
It's always, let's go off to the next thing. And
Mhm.
and so I that's where he came from. And then, you get Caitlin, and she's just like a lot of 40-year-old women that I know that are now
Yeah.
divorced,
Yeah.
raising kids, and there's like, where's all the good men?
Yeah.
Hey, I'm happy with my job, I like my kids, I'm doing my best, but is this my life? Is it? And so anyway, the three of them came together in the story.
So at what point in the story you start with Jasper and this idea of this elderly man and the dog who we all loved, and then you go, you're like, okay, let's kind of loosely connect this to the story of Job. Then you said you get Tanner. At what point did you want to make, did you know before you started writing the book, which is a whole nother question, how much did you know before you start typing? But at what point did you know that you wanted Tanner to be related to Jasper?
I think I knew early on, very early on, if you're going to send someone to town to find an answer, you want an answer of some sort. It could be the answer's buried in a cemetery, or the answer it could be something like this. Um, and I knew it at the very beginning, because if you've read the book of Job, Job's faith is rewarded in the end, and he pretty much gets a whole new family. And it followed that
Yeah,
parallel, right? That's pretty much the final scene of the novel.
right.
Is he's like, oh my gosh, it did parallel right to the end.
Yeah.
Um, and so I knew right away. As a general rule, to go back to the previous question, I always know the endings of my novels before I start. I know the beginning, I know the ending, I know 4 or 5 major plot points. If there's an A and B story, I know 4 or 5 plot points in each of those. I know how the characters meet, the ones that will fall in love. And I know the conflict, what the reason it will be difficult for them to be together. So I know all of that prior to writing. And it's, you sift through thousands and thousands of uh, ideas, before finally some random collection of 15 or 20 ideas says, yes, this is a story that I think I should write.
Are you writing? Are you writing notes? Is it all in your head? Is it
All in the head.
It's all in your head.
All
So there's no like scribbling. What if none of that? It's all up here.
Yeah, it's all in my head. And here's the thing: if it's a good idea, you don't forget it, and when it feels right. You're like, okay, it just feels right, and so you don't forget it. And you're like, okay, well, there's this white deer, and you're like, how can a little old man save a deer in the forest? I had to go learn all about deer and territories and how you keep deer away, what works, what poachers do, the whole bit. I had to look into all that stuff, and Jasper had to know that. So, you do a little bit of research then.
Okay, so a lot of authors will say when they start writing, they don't exactly know what the characters are going to do or where the story's going to go. But you're saying you pretty much know what's going to happen before you start writing.
Yeah, I have to. I think in the types of novels that I write, the type of novel that I write, obviously, I try to move the reader through an entire range of human emotion, including tears,
Yes.
right? But if I don't know why someone is crying, like let's say a certain character dies or a certain animal dies or something, if I don't know, yeah, I can be writing along and bump off too many people, and it just
Uh-huh.
becomes melodrama.
Okay.
So if I know someone's gonna die, then you're pretty sure that other people won't for the most part.
So when you're writing this character of Jasper and you're like putting him through so much,
Yeah.
like what does that feel like? Is that heavy for you? Do you feel bad? Do you feel like
Yeah. Yeah. When it was really sad, right? He ends up in the burn
yeah,
ward and then he's in this coma, right? And can you imagine waking up from a coma? You know that most of your family has died except for the one son, and there they tell you that he committed
yeah,
suicide.
yeah,
I mean, you're like, it is no wonder for me that Jasper retreated
yeah,
into just being a hermit, right? Just being a hermit, living in his cabin,
yeah,
just spending his days with Arlo, who of course doesn't care that Jasper's burned. He
yeah.
just wants milk bones. He just wants his milk bones. He just wants his treats.
Hot dog, anything. Do you ever have to like walk away when you're like writing something really sad or like take a break? Like, do you ever feel just sad in general, like you're experiencing their pain?
Yeah, it's happened in the past. I don't know that it happened in Counting Miracles.
Uh-huh.
I don't know that it happened there. I don't necessarily. There's a lot of tragedy in Counting Miracles, but it was in the
Right.
past. So it probably didn't hit me. But there's when I was writing The Rescue, which is really inspired by my son and the Asperger's severe autism at the time. He wasn't speaking. There's a lot of fears that I put into the main character there, Sarah Andrews, that were my fears. And you had
Yeah.
to walk away, walk to remember, inspired by my
Yeah.
sister. So there was some pain there. And of course, when I wrote 3 Weeks with My Brother, and I had to relive the death of my mom, the death of my father, the death of my sister,
Yeah.
and those types of things. There have been times, not so much in this particular novel. I didn't find this novel particularly sad. I thought it was kind of a happy ending novel, so to speak.
Yeah, I don't think that I cried necessarily, but I just like felt for Jasper so much and I wanted him to get a win. And when he's like laying there in the woods and you know, about the time that I caught on to the fact I was like, the jog is gonna save his life, I was like, this is so good. And I just
Right.
loved that part. Is it hard like okay, let me ask you this. This is a bit more of a generic question, but like your books do make people cry. And this book did. One of my friends was telling me how she was like in a coffee shop crying while she was reading this. Somebody just commented, "I cried for Jasper in the end," and somebody else said, I cry with every book." Like, how do you know, or how do you make people cry?
That's that's just good writing. I don't know. That's it's a combination. I think you have to really like the characters,
Mhm.
and whatever the scene is has to feel very real to the reader. And then there's a balance there of not doing too much, but not to allow the reader to fill in their own emotion
Mhm.
too. It's almost the same way that you get them to fall in love. When I'm writing a
Okay.
book and I'm getting characters to fall in love, by the time one of my characters says, "I love you," the reader should be thinking, well, I knew that 5 pages ago or 10.
Uh-huh.
What took you so long? It's kind of the
Right.
same thing with tears. You want it to, by the time it's there, they're already really sad by the time you're writing the sad lines. It's a flow. It's gosh, it's every sentence structure, it's pacing. It comes down to a lot of different things that I've learned how to do, but I know it when I get it,
Yeah.
but sometimes it takes a little bit to get there.
Yeah.
I'll reread it and say, it's not right, it's not right, it's too much, it's too little, doesn't flow well enough. And in the end, I'll and in the end though, I get it to be what I want it to be.
Do you have anybody that helps you get it there? Do you have somebody that like is always your first reader
Yeah.
or somebody that you really trust?
Yeah, I've worked with my Teresa Park, who was the original agent on the Notebook. She actually pulled my letter out of the slush pile. I still work with
Okay.
her. She's kind of stepped away from agenting now, but she still is the first reader of my novel. And really, it's just tended to go through two people. It goes through my agent, and then it'll go to my editor.
Okay.
And I use them for different reasons. For my agent, that's a lot of story concept, pacing, tightening novels, this work, this didn't. So I do a lot of that. And then it goes to my editor. And my editor gets one of my manuscripts without having the slightest idea of what the book is about.
Okay.
I've never told them. They know I'm writing, but they don't know anything about it. And that to me is like how a reader's going to experience the novel as well. And so they'll say, wow, it worked really good. It got a little slow here in this section, so we're going to do this. They'll see things that I don't see in my agencies because we're so deep in it. But then by the time, so then it goes through that phase of editing, and then I think it's ready to go. But it's just two people, and that's it.
It's incredible. So you wrote this one little thing in the book. It was one of my favorite little moments. And I typed out the quote, but I really love this idea where you said, Caitlin says, I was just thinking that Monday is the perfect day to start being the best version of yourself since you have 6 more days to practice. Or every week should begin with generosity. And she's like, don't you think the world would be a better place if every week began with generosity? First of all, I really love that idea. I thought it was really made the character really special, made you really feel connected to her and love her and admire her. But what I'm curious to know is, how do you come up with stuff? Like, are you always gathering? Where did that come from? Was that something your grandma said to you, or?
It's something I say to my kids.
Okay.
I think that generosity and gratitude are incredibly important. The people that I tend to enjoy most are people who are grateful about, they're not bitter. They're grateful. They find reasons to be happy. They're grateful for the people they know. They're even grateful for some of the bad things in their lives because it turned them into the person they are
Right.
today. And I love that. And it's the same thing kind of with generosity. Yeah, I've tried to do as much as I possibly can over the years. Founded a school, and I support scholarship. I give a lot of scholarships every year, and all sorts of different things. And I just think it makes the world a better place. That's kind of, I guess that one kind of came from me, that little portion there.
I really, really loved it. Tell me about North Carolina. I mean, I love that's one of the things I love about your books is that I can picture it. I know it. I know the people. I know the culture. I know the landscape. You're not from North Carolina.
No.
So why do you love it so much?
Well, I've lived here for 32 years, so I have been here a long time, most of my adult life. It's funny. There's different kinds of writers when you reach where I am, right? Most of my books are all bestsellers and things like that, and you come out with a book a year, a book every other year, and they really kind of fall into two types. It's like you have readers that you read because you know what to expect, and that could be everyone from like Lee Child. Hey, Jack Reacher's going to roll into town, have this big adventure, take down the bad guys, get on the bus, and leave town.
Yeah.
That's going to be the next book, and you're in the mood to read exactly that, so you choose it.
Yeah.
There's other authors that something, but you don't really know anything, like Stephen King.
Yeah.
Hey, it could be a werewolf, it could be a vampire, it could be a space alien, it could be a little girl who starts fires, right? You don't know. All you kind of know is it's going to have something supernatural,
Mm-hmm.
and it's probably going to be set in Maine. And that's all you know.
Yeah.
But you don't know if all the characters are going to live or all the
Yeah.
good guys, and some of the main characters passed away. So you don't know if and so you read him because you know a little bit,
Uh-huh.
but you also want to have this element of I don't know
Uh-huh.
exactly how it's going to end. And so I do the latter category. And so with me, it's going to have a novel with a romantic element in the story.
Mm-hmm.
That's going to happen, but you don't know whether they're going to get together, whether one of them's going to pass away,
Yeah.
whether they want to be together but can't. You just don't
Yeah.
know. But you also know it will be set in North Carolina, and
Yeah.
that's it. So I give you a couple of things and say, there you go.
Okay. I'm going to add something to your list that I have noticed is always in your books. I don't know if anybody's ever said this to you, but I know that you love food and
Yes,
you love to write about food and describe food.
I do.
And it is so much fun. And I started thinking about it because, like in Counting Miracles, nobody is really cooking necessarily, but Tanner orders takeout.
Right.
And you describe that meal like I'm right there. I'm like right there with the mushrooms, you know?
Right. Yeah. I mean, one of the great pleasures in life, right, is
Do
to have a
you
wonderful.
realize that you're doing
Oh,
that?
yeah.
Do you always go like, okay, here's the food segment coming?
Oh yeah. Oh, here it comes. Right. And I do. Yeah. Today, in fact, I'm working on a novel now, and I wrote about Clams Casino, by the way. So, and yeah, I mean, I write
Do you
about.
like to cook?
I do. I do. Now, I'm not
Okay.
a baker,
Uh-huh.
but I
Uh-huh.
cook, but yeah, and I cook lots of really really good things. I make great mussels, or I do great stews, chilies, casseroles. I mean, I do all sorts of fun stuff,
I
and
noticed.
I like it because then I get to eat what I want every time.
It's true. That's true.
If
I'm
I'm
the cook in
cooked
our house too, and I don't cook anything that I don't like.
exactly, and
And
and it's always what I'm in the mood for,
that's
and I'm like, this is
it's
perfect.
very true. I felt like I read this past month I read Safe Haven. I'd never read that one before, and I feel like I could make stuffed peppers
Yeah.
by just listening to you describe how she makes the peppers. Anyway, I really enjoyed that. I also made your chicken salad
Yes.
recipe, and it was great. It was great.
It's very tasty.
It was great.
I mean, yeah, I got quite that was quite funny for a while. I mean, for those who don't know, I put Splenda in my chicken salad instead of sugar, and a lot of people went bananas about that. It kind of went viral, and if you Google it, you'll see that there's lots of people who say it's the got to be the most atrocious thing ever concocted. Well, oh, okay. I mean, I will tell you, I kind of laughed my way through that viral moment. There are way worse
Uh,
reasons to go viral
yeah.
than because you put Splenda in your chicken salad instead of
It was
sugar.
nice. It had like, well, I cook with fake sweeteners all the time because
Right.
my husband is very low carb. And so I'm very attuned to all of those sweeteners. But I liked how it had like a sweet and a spiciness to it. And I made my chicken salad recipe and then I made yours and I made my daughter compare them when we did a little video. And she liked the taste of yours, but she didn't like all the crunchy stuff because
Oh,
she's 13. And so
yes. I love the crunchy stuff.
I
I
do too.
love the celery. Yeah, I need different textures too, not just taste, but textures.
Well, I love your food element that's in all of your books. And I just wanted to make sure you knew that. I noticed that you love food.
I do. There's no question.
Okay. So one of the things that I really wanted to ask you is I was just thinking about how you've written this was your 24th novel.
Yeah.
So I watched this interview and you were talking about how hard writing is
Yes.
and how it's hard every time. It
Every
doesn't
time.
get easier. It's hard every time. So what is easier about writing your 24th book than writing your third book? Is there anything easier about it?
Well, certainly you've developed some skills over time, right? I've written 24 books. A great way to say that is I could write the Notebook today, right? I could do that today. However, I don't think I had the writing chops to write something like The Longest Ride
Uh-huh.
or Safe Haven,
Uh-huh.
or maybe even Counting Miracles as my first novel.
Okay.
I just didn't know enough about everything there that goes into writing
Uh-huh.
to have been able to pull that off. So some things you have developed more skill, but the challenge then is it gets harder to be original.
Yeah.
How can you continue to be original? And that's the challenge. And to come up with a story that I think people will that will resonate. So if you look at my novels, I say I try to do three things with virtually every element.
Okay.
And they are I try to make it interesting, I try to make it original, and I try to make it universal.
Okay.
And so it's really easy to do two of those things. Like you could be original and interesting and come up with Hannibal Lecter.
Okay.
That's easy,
Right.
but he's not very universal. Not
Uh-huh.
a lot of people pal around with cannibalistic serial killers on it. So they just don't. So how do you make someone like Caitlin? Well, she's very universal. People really like Caitlin. 40s, divorce, this and that. This is this universal aspect. But then you go into the generosity thing. See, she's also original.
Uh-huh.
And then she's interesting. Just her relationship with her kids is kind of
Yeah.
interesting. Her relationship with Casey is interesting. She's
And
doing her
she's a
best.
single mom. She's successful
Right.
in her job, but yet she's very like kind and generous, not just with like with her time, how she visits her patients. Okay.
So you combine these three, but that goes to every element within the novel. And it gets harder and harder and harder to be original, the more novels that you write. I'm actually working on two novels at the present time,
Okay.
and they're both I think people will really like both of them. So one of them's very different from anything I've ever done, and I can't really talk about it, but
Okay.
um, I'm thinking it'll be out next September, and there we go. It'll be different.
I can't wait. Is it harder? Do you find yourself like gravitating more towards, because you've written so many, like we have Jasper, who's an elderly man. You've written Teenage Girl in, the last song. You've done Teenage Boy. You've done, so many different ages, stages, genders, races, whatever. Do you have a favorite type to write, or do you have a type was the most difficult to write?
A lot of them are difficult because most of the characters I've not been. If I'm doing a
Yeah.
walk to remember, and that's the perspective of a 17-year-old boy, at least I've been a 17-year-old boy. I've got some experience with some of that, right? But a lot of the characters, the hardest part is to get their voice and to make them come alive and to meet these three criteria and to make them be characters that the readers want to hang out with for the course of the novel. You know, I think there was a review that said, hey, you tend to like my good guys, and it's fun to cheer for the villains in this novel, the bad
Uh-huh.
teenagers and the evil family. You hated them. They were just so
Yeah.
evil, and, uh, and that's what you want to do, because those are the kind of books I like to read, right?
Yeah.
That's when I think of something like Lonesome Dove by Larry
I
McMurtry.
love
Hey,
Lonesome Dove.
right. That's what they do there, or you read Gods and Generals. It's the same thing. You cheer for the good guys, and you root for the bad, and it's fun to hate the
Hate the
bad
bad
guys.
guys. Yeah.
And it's fun to hate the bad guys. And so that's what I try to do. And every novel's it's its own epic journey, it feels like.
Do you miss the characters when you're finished?
Oh yeah, yeah. Some of them. Yeah, I like Jasper. I like Maggie and the Wish. Maggie seems like the kind of lady I could have hung out with, for a long time. I mean, certainly all the characters. You like them all. right?
Yeah.
And then some part of me sometimes says, well, maybe I should revisit something. Maybe I should do a sequel. Like, whatever happened to this
Yeah.
character? What happened next? And hey, maybe I have no idea what's going to be the novel after the two I'm working on. I have no
Uh-huh.
idea. Maybe it'll be one of those.
I did love Maggie in The Wish. I don't know if you know this, but I came to Counting Miracles because I tried to get you to come and talk about The Wish because it's the holiday
Right.
season and I always love to do a holiday book. And your
That,
your publisher was like, well, he'll do Counting Miracles. And I was like, well, I don't know about Counting Miracles. And they sent me an early copy. And anyway, that's how this all happened. So I really loved The Wish. I thought that
that,
story, I love the uniqueness to the story. I love the ending of the story. I really love
Thank
that.
you. Yeah, that is my Christmas story, basically. I've done dog story, I've done a Christmas story. You got to do these things. You got to,
Yeah.
like Stephen King did Cujo, and I did The Guardian or whatever through Arlo in here. So, yeah,
Christmas books are really hard because I just find most of them to be just kind of boring. I I really love The Wish.
yeah,
So
yeah.
okay, I don't want to keep you much longer, but I'm curious to know what do you feel like is your most underrated book? Like the book that you're like, because I know that everybody's like, oh, I love the Notebook. I love the Notebook. I love the Notebook too. It's great. But you read 24
Yeah.
books. So if you were going to tell someone, like, this is the book that I really loved, and I just didn't feel like people got it. I don't know. Is there a book like that?
Yeah, it's hard to say. They've all been
They
pretty successful.
have.
Of the
They have.
24, 11 of them have been movies, and I think four or five more in various stages of production. So, I think they've all, but there's a couple that, maybe early on in my career, The Rescue or Bend in the Road. I think those are really terrific books. It was as good a work as I could do at that time in my career. Um, I think they're good. Shoot, The Longest, See Me is underrated.
Okay.
See Me's underrated. That hasn't been a film, and it came out, I don't know, maybe 7, 8 years ago. It's a terrific book. One of my favorite characters of all time in that book is just a very honest, troubled young man who's trying to the take a different path in life.
Okay.
And I think it's underrated. He's a character that I haven't really written about before. So there's a couple. Bend in the
Okay.
Road, The Rescue, See
The
Me.
Rescue and See Me. I'm going to read both of those because I heard you say about The Rescue that you put a lot of your personal experience
Oh
into
yeah.
that.
Oh
And
yeah, a lot.
so, and yeah, I mean, that's what I love is to hear authors say, like, especially an author like you who have written so many books, and I know they're all your children and you love them all, but to hear people always be so opinionated and to just know like that there was one that really, really resonated with you. I love that. Okay, I'm gonna read both of those. All right, so before you go, just one last thing. I know that you say you write what you want to read and that you read a lot.
Yeah.
So, who are your favorite? Like, I've read all of their book authors, or some of your like
Oh,
a book you've
shoot.
read multiple times.
Yeah, I think probably one of the best, and it's certainly outside of my genre, but I think um, the Passage by Justin Cronin was just one of the most amazing things I'd ever read. It was one of the few novels I picked up, and for those who don't know about it, and it's certainly far from what I write, it took two of the most overused concepts in the world at that time in the world of literature, vampires and the end of the world,
Okay,
and it made it brand new.
I haven't read that one.
Oh, I've probably read that half a dozen times, and I still don't know how he did it. I'm like, how can you take these overused concepts and make it feel utterly, entirely new? So it was really very impressive, right? Just a tremendous, tremendous work.
That's amazing. Do you have an author that you always read their books when
Oh,
they come out?
I have a few of them. Yeah, I think we'll go with one that a lot of people may not know, John Connolly he's originally from Ireland. He sets a lot of his novels in Maine. He's probably up there around 25, 26 novels as well. He's been an international bestseller, and I'm pretty sure he's a bestseller here in the US as well. I'm not sure he's gone to number one.
Okay.
But he can write, and I don't say that about every writer, but that guy, he writes, and he doesn't miss. Now they're scary though, so if you don't like scary, you're not going to like them. But yeah, it is a talent that I marvel. And of course, I like your Stephen Kings or whoever, but I'd rather give a couple of names that maybe people didn't know.
I haven't read I don't read a lot of scary books.
Yeah, and certainly don't read them because they're a little bit scary, right? But I just marvel at the writing, the everything about it, the story, the writing, the pacing, the structure, the characters, the whole bit, everything. When you get a novel where everything works, it's a wonderful, wonderful treat. And not every novel has everything work.
Yeah,
it could be really good, but maybe it's a little slow,
yes.
Or it's really good, but the writing wasn't quite as stylish as it should be. Still be enjoyable, but when you get one that clicks on every level, you just go, wow. And I hope, Counting Miracles. I try to do that with my novels. I try to make sure they click on every level.
Yeah, and I really felt like it did, and I just feel like books are such a powerful tool. Stories specifically they're the most powerful tool to make people understand, feel empathy, just to be able to put yourself in someone else's shoes, and even a great way to give people hope, that things do work out sometimes, and that if they don't, then you do still live and you do still move on, and there's life after the pain. And so I'm just so grateful for people like you who do the hard work, because I love it. I loved when I heard you say writing is hard. It's so hard, and that you keep doing it though, because it's important, and pushing through the hard.
Yeah, I just want to see if I can, right? I mean, there's a part of me that says, I want to write the one novel that's it. That's it. I can hang it up, say, I'll never get better. That's it. Everyone's going to agree this is the best. I don't know. I try to do that with every book, but people like different books of mine.
That's right. You're never going to, because everybody's so different.
Right.
But I love how you keep that's your goal, because if that's your goal, you're going to write till you die. Because there's so many different criteria for what makes the perfect book. But thank you. Thanks for coming on here tonight too, and thank you for this wonderful story, and keep writing. We want more.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you very much.
You too. Have a great night.
Bye.
Well, guys, we just got to talk to Nicholas Sparks. I hope you enjoyed that conversation, but I know you didn't enjoy it as much as I did. I cannot believe I got to talk to such a legend. 24 books. Counting Miracles is his latest one. If you haven't read it yet, make sure you pick it up. If you are a huge Nicholas Sparks fan, let me know in the comments what's your favorite Nicholas Sparks book. I gotta say, it's the holidays. If you've never read The Wish, it is a wonderful Christmas story. It's about a teen mom. I also love Safe Haven. If you like a real, how do you say it? Surprise, I don't know, it would surprise me at the very end. That's an old classic. And of course, Counting Miracles. So let me know in the comments below, what's your favorite Nicholas Sparks book? If you know someone that has read all of Nicholas Sparks' book, but they didn't know about this interview, make sure you share it with them. Like and subscribe so you can get more of this content if you like it. And if you're not a part of the Holly Furtick Book Club, I don't know what you're waiting for. It's super easy. All you have to do is go to hollyfurtick.com, give me your email address, and I promise I won't spam you. I'm just going to email you and let you know what we're reading and when we're meeting, so that you can join us for the live discussion over on Instagram. I love you. I hope you're having the best day, and I'll see you back here next time.